going to stop my video so that everybody will pay attention to the screen. Thank you for joining today. This webcast is something I asked our team to hurry up and schedule, and I did it because of seeing some of the new features of 9.2.7 and release 23. So the reason why it's urgent is because there's quite another technology uplift. I've been doing a similar presentation, and this contains a lot of my 9.2.6 material, but I'm also going to talk about the 9.2.7 material. We'll first talk a little bit about release 22.23, some of the technical uplift challenges, some of the overview, and next discussion. But I wanted to take 2 or 3 minutes and just explain to people what you're facing, what Oracle is telling people, and what you're really facing. When 9.2 came out a few years back, Oracle, they went with this continuous adoption approach. They were getting killed by customers that, every 3 years is too much to do an upgrade. So they went with this continuous adoption. But I'm here to tell you this continuous adoption is, I'm not going to call it BS, but you do truly have, depending upon where you're at now, a huge potential uplift akin to doing an upgrade. So even though you're still on the same tools release and don't have table conversions, all of the complexities, all of them, including potential retrofits, exist with going to the latest tools. Now, if you're on 9.2.5 and you've already gone to 64-bit, you're not in that bad of shape. If you're on 9.2.6 already, of course, you're at 64-bit, but even going to 9.2.7 is going to involve some big technical changes. Don't expect, your 80 to 100-hour tools release. If you're on 9.2.5, have not, and still sitting on 32-bit and running old versions of operating systems, old version of databases, trust me, you're looking at a 400 to 600-hour project. So it may be continuous adoption, but by no means is this going to be a small project. Thank you, Oracle, for continuing to improve this product. It's great, but there's still a lot to do, and I'm going to talk about these things. And I designed this, I didn't want to exclude people that were on releases prior to 9.2.6. So although I've done this before, we're going to still talk about the 9.2.6 things because they still mostly apply if you're on older tools release. If you're on 9.2.6, much of this is just going to be small. So some of the key drivers, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the application side of what is new in these tools releases. GSI's got other webcasts that we do where we talk about the features, but there are some high level things that you should know about. Automate, optimize, transform. That's one of Oracle's key things that you'll see in in release 22 and 23. I forgot to mention, tools 9.2.7 came out a couple of weeks ago in preparation for In Focus. 9.2.7.1 was released earlier this week, so the .0 is already come and gone. But if you're expecting to go to release 23, that won't be available probably until December, first part of January. So that's the big application pack. And yes, you can take the tools release without doing the application pack as long as you're on update 4 or higher. So if you're on update 4 and you're running an older tools release, much of the foundation is there. If you're on a tools release prior to that, or an application release prior to that, you're going to be chasing your tail with ESUs, and I'd suggest holding off until you can take an update as well. So some of the things that Oracle mentions, here is they're looking to simplify the user interface, through many different application improvements, automation, and there's a bunch of things like voucher matching improvements, routing improvements, etc. From the Orchestrator standpoint, they are doing all kinds of new changes. I'll talk about a few of those in a little bit, but I don't want to go over too much of that. I want to stick strictly to CNC here. All right, now, if you're going to 926, it is a 64-bit only tools release. If you have not upgraded to 64-bit, you need to. I often get the question is like, I'm on a release of 925. Would it make sense for me to do 64-bit? And I will say that, yeah, it'll simplify things because you'll be taking off a little bit at a time. You can do it all at once, big bang if you want to, but it does make the project run a little bit longer. Zero downtime package deployment, that's pretty cool. Through some complicated serialized object mapping, in the past you theoretically could do it, but now you don't have to do anything special. It's behind the scenes, so even while you're using the system with UBs running, etc., you can deploy a package. Anybody that comes on new will get the new package, and it's kind of like a drain stoppage. Change Assistant has greatly changed, where there is integration with the system instead of downloads, so that you can compare what you've actually applied, not what you've downloaded. Server Manager always improved, and there are more features and capability in that. I'll talk a little more about some of those features in a little bit. Offline Server Manager orchestrations. I'm not an orchestrator guy, so I don't exactly know what all of that means, but I presume it'll be helpful to you. Sorry about that if I just don't know much about that one. Some more things: improved extensibility, logic and form extensions. I know GSI does a webcast on that, but Fisher does that for us. Oracle has a lot of material on it. Automatic kernel reconnections, very useful in case the call object kernel or something like that dies. Users can automatically reconnect. There's more information in the security history. I actually love this feature. They now monitor source workstation, source IP, source country. So although there are some UDOs that you can load that will give you some analytics right in an E1 page, and they actually provide the E1 page. If you're using a SIM, you can export the F9312 into your SIM, and you could actually do some pretty sophisticated testing. If somebody signs in to production from North Korea, let's say, it might not be a country that you're expecting somebody to sign in from, and you can do a little more troubleshooting. Obviously, someone's broken into your system. So really cool features, a little more modern with today's times. Again, more orchestration, file management, and dealing with the files that you have to store. Workflow Studio is now web-based, so you don't need a fat client for that particular tool. So I keep saying to my friends at Oracle that you're going to make JDE SaaS, and they're like, no, we're never going to do it. Here's a feature that is getting closer to that. So they deny it. It's just something I kind of like to poke fun at. Many of the things that they told me they never would do, they have done. For instance, I was told by the Oracle development that they would never go to 64-bit. Ta-da, we have 64-bit today. Now, the reason we have 64-bit is because the Java team at Oracle deprecated 32-bit, and that's really what forced JD Edwards into the 32-bit world. A few other things like virtual batch queues 6-7 years ago, they suggested that GSI write virtual batch queue capability, and then they did it. So we just wait and be patient, and eventually they'll get the good stuff. Okay, so here's some of the 927 features that many of you have been waiting for. And Oracle is calling many of the things here, the first 4 things they're calling Sentinel administration. So it's a part of their quote unquote Sentinel administration. The first one is the password reset self-service. Long past due. A lot of people have written their own programs, third-party tools to help you reset password automatically, but now it will inherently be a part of the process. And they've got a nice little drawing on how that process flow works. And some of you want it, more than willing to share it with you, just ping me. Here's a biggie. Here's another one that's leading towards that SaaS solution, applying updates via a web client. Okay, so how do you have to apply web updates today? Well, using a fat client aka the deployment server. So interestingly enough, some of the things that we're going to tell you about here with Tools 927, the web client, or excuse me, the deployment server is technically no longer necessary. So this is one of them, applying updates via the web client. The other thing is is that you can now do package builds via the web client. So if you're doing 927, you're going to have some database work. There's a new database. There's a new environment. There's the JPlanner environment, Java-based planner that you will use to do package builds. So deployment server, just about history. That was one of their key development efforts coming out of Oracle for years. I know our friend Jeff Erickson has said for 10 years that he's going to figure out a way to get rid of the deployment server, and by George, they've just about got it. Couple of other things that are used to help CNC folks with servers crashing and high availability is provisioning enterprise servers via application packaging. So basically you can package up your enterprise server into a PAR file through a centralized repository and basically set up server manager on a new machine and deploy it out. That also works with containers, and they've added containerization support. You could do containers, but many of us have set up our JD Edwards systems to account for the worst case scenario, and we haven't seen all that widespread adoption for containers. And this may even preclude the need for a container, knowing that you can just stand up a new server if you think you need it and deploy it out, maybe spin down a machine. It's designed primarily for cloud, people that have set things up in OCI, Azure, or AWS. Right in line with the server manager, the HTML configuration, they're going to a centralized HTML config. So basically your INI files are going to be in a centralized repository. When you need a new web server, you can just spin it up and deploy the configuration. Really great thing. And how about this last one? It's not really part of Sentinel. The first four are Sentinel, but I just didn't want to do a slide with one item on it. So I put secure SMTP. This has been a gap for a very long time. So TLS will be supported, and you don't have to leave an insecure SMTP server in order to send your workflow messages, et cetera, through JDE. That one is long past due. And here's a few more. Oracle DB optimization. And this one, a lot of the SQL people and iSeries people say, well, what about us? Yeah, well, Oracle first, right? And there are quite a few changes, improved performance for workloads with high latency. So many of you, if you try to segment some of your servers on a network basis, like put your deployment server and fat clients on one network and have your backend database server, enterprise server on another, even if you have 1 or 2 milliseconds, there's a performance issue. And this is designed to help some of that, not all of it, but make it easier. And it's designed to improve faster response times. JD Edwards is very chatty. It always has been. It's the way it was designed 28 years ago now. There's just a lot of things here where with the kernel databases allow things to remain connected. Finally, TLS support for database connections and connectivity. I believe it's SSL for iSeries, but that if you're on iSeries and you're looking for SSL connectivity, especially ODBC connections, you now have that support. Many more Orchestrator Studio enhancements, separate webcast. We could spend the entire webcast talking about that. And here's the biggie, support for spec objects in OMW. We've seen OMW for web for things like UDOs and anything personalization, but things like RDA and FDA, you still had to use a fat client or the deployment server in order to promote it. Now you have OMW for web for everything. So again, leaning towards, is JDE someday going to be SaaS? They say no, maybe. Here's another step in that direction. So another one, predictive patching. I mentioned this earlier, that you can apply through Update Manager. You can do ESUs via the web client as opposed to a FAT client. And I think we talked about that one already. Okay, so I applied, just wanted to show you, this is Oracle's release 23. If you attended In Focus last week, this is something you've probably seen. This is just the tools release. It says release 23 up at the top, but it's really 927. And I did confirm with our friends at Oracle that if you apply 927, all of these things on this 927 slide actually applies, and you can use. The tools roll up the planner issue, the base tools baseline issue, and associated special instructions give you all of this capability. All right, so here's some of the biggies. If you're on 925 or below and you're sitting on Windows 2016 or older versions of Linux, you are faced with upgrading your OS and may not be able to use your existing servers. I did have some people say, you know, like, oh, I've got 10 web servers for production. They're on Windows 2016. What's the best way to upgrade them? Well, there's two ways. One, you could stand up another 10 servers. If you're using virtualization or cloud technologies, you'll have a little bit of a cost overrun. The advantage to that is when you go live, you can just kind of pull the rug out from underneath it. The other way would be to just do in-place operating system upgrades. One is fast. The one just applying operating system upgrades is probably faster and cheaper, but more dangerous, right? What happens if a couple servers don't come up, or you can't upgrade the OSs and you don't find that out? And hopefully you've tested it in your lower level environments and you know you can. I generally go the safe route. Just, you know, if you can afford to have the additional servers, stand them up and let them be there. So if you have 10 web servers, you have 10 on the new tools release, so you're got 20 for a short period of time. However, if you're using an old version of the middleware, now you're talking about upgrading. You know, if you're running on an old version of WebLogic or WebSphere, now you not only have an operating system to upgrade, but you have a middleware version. And I can attest that it is faster to stand up new machines, install the newer version of the middleware, and stage the servers. It'll be less time, a little more money for the servers and the VMs, but less consulting time. So we do recommend standing it up if feasible. Again, 926, 927, they are 64-bit. Some of you may ask, well, what about my third parties? It is a big concern. If it's an if your third-party tool is a Oracle certified product, it's already there. The last holdout, I think, was DSI, but they are now completely 64-bit. There are some other programs we've heard that aren't 32-bit, or excuse me, 64-bit, that may or may not work. You'll have to contact them. When doing these upgrades, you get the message that you may need to retrofit your code as a result of 64-bit. Honestly, I haven't run into a single instance where that's been the case, where somebody's had to retrofit, their code just comes across, but there is a tool to check that. Again, most products are already 64-bit. So there's a totally new set of platform requirements, starting with 925 and higher. Oracle, Solaris on Spark, and HPUX Titanium will not be supported, so you might need to consider that. And here's some biggies here. Oracle Enterprise Manager 12.2, Windows 2012. I think even Microsoft is stopping 2012 at this point, unless you're on Azure. You bought yourself 3 years. SQL Server 2014. Some older versions of Edge browser, Chrome browser, and Apple iOS are not supported. So what can you expect to upgrade? Probably your operating system for both 926 and 927, Linux 7 and 8. That's a broad category. There's a bunch of dots, Linux 7.1, 2, 3. I always just take the latest available. and we've not had any issue. iSeries 7.3 and 7.4 for both versions. Middleware WebLogic 12.2.1.4 and 14.1.1 are the supported versions. If you're standing up new machines, go with the 14 version. You'll get a longer life cycle. The database, Oracle 19c, even if you're on iSeries or SQL Server, the deployment server still has a copy of the Oracle database that has to be upgraded. So right now, 19c is the one that's supported. I don't think 21 is yet available. It will be soon. Java, you have to upgrade your JVM. Compilers, definitely, if you're on Windows, you need to worry about your .NET. The Visual Studio .NET 2017 is current. With 9.2.7, the current version is not yet supported. I think it's .NET 2021. It will be supported soon. I've talked to the folks at Oracle. Some of the later tools releases of 9.2.7 will support that. This first couple of releases do not. So, you know, be prepared to upgrade any Windows compiler that includes the deployment server. I'll get back to you on that, but I know the any Windows SQL Server requires that. WebSphere 8.5.5 and 9.0.1 is supported. Change Assistant, you will have to take a new Change Assistant, and it integrates with AIS instead of the download directory. I mentioned that earlier. You also will have to load up the 64-bit business functions. It's not that long of a process. It takes 3 or 4 hours. So here's some notes on the 9.2.6, the things that we've run into, and that is double check the MTRs. Without a doubt, the MTRs, and Oracle also has a platform summary which puts everything in one spot that can help some. I have the software update guide and tools release guide links in this document. When I did this, I absolutely needed this. The learning path implementing 64-bit, if you've not done that yet, follow that guide. There's a known issues. I'll get to the 9.2.7 in a minute. There are some known issues with 9.2.6, and trust me, you need that. You absolutely need these documents, and you need to review the known issues document. There's patches that have to be applied. If you install the Oracle database, whether you're on using Oracle for your main database or just the deployment server, there's a patch that it will not work if you do not take the patch. I put this one bullet point in for myself. Now I actually read the known issues document because I didn't. I thought I was a CNC guy, a technical guy, use the manual only as a last resort. Well, I'm letting you know, you absolutely have got to go through that document. Another question that pops up is like, hey, my deployment server is shared. The deployment server does not completely go away yet. I haven't gotten with my friends at Oracle to find out what is still on there. But if you go into 9.2.6, and some of our clients are, you can get away with upgrading the deployment server when you upgrade production. The deployment, if you have most JDE clients do not have separate deployment servers. Some do. If you have a shared deployment server for your lower level environments and production, you can upgrade it later. And that's what we've been doing. So you can leave it the OS on an older version. You still have to upgrade the database to get the new planner, but you don't have to upgrade the OS. So if you're on Windows 2016, you can wait until after the upgrade is done to upgrade it to 2019 if you wish to wait. Okay, some 9.2.7 material. There's a different known issues, and there's also a required components document. You'll want to load the 9.2.7 required components. It tells you a lot of the things I've been telling you here. A lot of my material came from that document. Same thing, you can upgrade the deployment afterwards, and hopefully you don't even need the deployment server after 9.2.7. Okay, so download the latest tools. This is how you would handle the deployment server. Keep in mind that you need update 6. Update 6 would take you to release 22. If you're on update 4, you might be able to save doing this. Otherwise, you'll have some issues with ESUs. It becomes a code currency project to a certain extent. Then you want to do the ESU fixed current, even though you just applied update 6 that has 8,000 plus objects. There's still some changes that will move you forward. I checked the JDK version. You're going to need the 64-bit JDK. Multiple platforms that you can get it for. If you're Linux, you need to grab that. And Windows, there are different versions. I usually download the Java runtime environment and the JDK just in case I need one or the other. You can use WebLogic 12.2.1.4, but if you're applying a new one anyway, go to 14 and give yourself the little extra time. Download the Oracle Database 9C for Oracle installations. There's a separate link or documentation on the database for the deployment server and exact notes on how to go about doing that. I was fortunate. I have a DBA manager, and I just asked him to do our Oracle. We did an Oracle database. I just had him do it, both the deployment server and the actual databases. So I mentioned the patch earlier. You need to make sure you've got the 19C client, excuse me, the 64-bit client, and I give you the doc ID on that required patch. Again, if you don't apply it, it won't work. You can't even sign in from the deployment server. So you need to apply the patch. Another thing I ran into is make sure you have 12 gigabytes on the deployment server. That's really not even enough. I would bump it up to 16 gigabytes just to make sure that you have enough space. And there's the link here on how to upgrade the to migrate the E1 local to the new release as well. The ODBC files has instructions on what to get. It's not just a single jar file anymore. There are 3 files, and you need to make sure you get all 3. Visual Studio bumped up. Any Windows servers that have a compiler, you'll need to bump that up. The new JDK, JRE, if you have the old 32-bit, you're going to need to remove it. I ran this command java dash version from the command prompt to make sure that it's running that it finds the 64-bit, not the 32-bit. In Windows, you need, it's not necessarily the Java class, it could be in the Windows path. So I go to the environmental variables just to make sure. Edit the Java home and path environment variables so it points to the 64-bit version. When you install Server Manager, you also want to install WebLogic 14. You can use the 12.2 version. Many of our clients now have separate machines for Server Manager and the deployment server. Mostly they did that because they did not want their deployment server to be a DR machine, but they still needed Server Manager and DR. All right, a few more notes. The old change assessment will need to be a new one. You will have to migrate the bitness from 32-bit to 64-bit if you have not yet done that. There's a special migration tool. This is true. This SMT 9240X64 is true for any 64-bit upgrade. Obviously, going back to 924 is where it ran. It's the same thing for 927, same one. Upgrade the Server Manager console to 64-bit, and this is just kind of like an order of operations. You will need an SSL certificate for your deployment server to configure SSL between the server management console and the agents. It's not necessarily a requirement, but I'd say you should do it. If you have a wildcard certificate, that will work. If you just do a self-signed certificate, you can do it. And quite honestly, this document, automated TLS SSL configuration document, it gives you some really simple examples of how to get it to work. And honestly, I hadn't done this before, and it only took me an hour to figure it out. So you'll need to install a Server Manager agent on the deployment server because that's how you deploy the tools release. The 64-bit agent must be running. Then you install and run your planner ESU. 64-bit, if you're on 926 or 927, there is a 32-bit version of the planner. Don't get it. And then of course, for you that have done it, special instructions.bat, you need to run that from the planner. There's a tools baseline issue. There's a tools automated special instructions. The automated instructions had a different name when 926 first came out, but the TL 927001, it looks like it's for 927, but it also applies to 926. And that just, the automated special instructions is just there to save you time. It does all kinds of things, creates OCM mappings. It's got, can create new tables. There's a lot of things that happen in there that makes the life of applying a bunch of special instructions from days into just an hour or two. Apply update 6. Now, keep in mind, there are UDOs and special instructions. Don't forget these. If you don't apply them, many of the features of release 22 or 23 won't work. There is an instruction applying UDOs using Change Assistant. And you can wait until after the web server is done if you want to use the new web deployment tool. Download and deploy the 64-bit business function ESUs. And for this is for 927, this UDO on 10,502 for 927. It's the web ESU deployment. That's what allows you to download and use ESUs via the web. You'll have to do retrofits. And then you've got a full package. You may wish to wait until the web and enterprise servers are built to do that, though. We've done that, or maybe you've got another CNC helping you and you're working on things simultaneously. There's a few things that you need to do to get some OCM mappings. If you want to use virtual batch queues, there's a UBE that you might want to investigate R986110B or do a search on virtual batch queues. You don't have to run that if you're not planning to use virtual batch queues, but it's very, in my opinion, it's very useful, especially if you're looking to do more high availability type things. It will certainly help. I mentioned the ODBC8 jar. There's 3 files in there. I got a link in this on where to get those. This last one really stumped me. I kept trying to sign onto the deployment server and I kept getting jvm.exe is pointed to the client folder. For some reason, now it goes into the /server locations, and if you change that location or copy it over, it will end up working for you. So a little more on the enterprise server. Double check the OS. Windows should be Windows 2019. 2021 is on the roadmap. It's not yet supported. It will be soon, or should I say Windows Server 2022. I got that wrong. iSeries 7.3 and 7.4. One of the sticklers with Linux and people that are doing upgrades is you'll need to make sure that you got the 64-bit versions of the packages. We found that a lot of people only had the 32-bit version, so you might want to double check the versions. There's a lot of them. Again, you're going to need a 64-bit JDK, 64-bit client. Another thing that got me was I had a Linux swap file of only 5 gigabytes, and I found out you need 15.4 gigabytes of swap space. So make sure you give yourself, at least that, maybe 16, maybe you want to go higher to 24. A lot of the installers will fail. You can't even install the database client if you don't have that much. Then you need to make sure that you've got the 64-bit agent installed, and then you distribute and deploy your tools. I found the enterprise servers and the web servers to be very simple to do compared to the deployment server and getting the package builds working. One of the things that you're going to have to do with 927, you're going to need some DBA help unless you are the DBA. Because you're going to have to create some new table spaces and you're going to have to migrate the planner from the local database into the new JPlan environment up in the system. Web server is almost identical to the enterprise server, checking the versions of the operating system, packages, etc., JDK and server manager. So from a process and procedure standpoint, no difference. I've sent you some documents, specifically ones related to 927 that are new concepts to CNC folks. A lot of the Sentinel features, using centralized configurations for Enterprise One HTML servers. I suggest you read that and learn how that would be advantage to you. Enterprise One tools release, the new orchestration tasks capability, in workflow. So I just included some links that came with that I stumbled across while I was updating for this webcast. Whew, boy, that was a whirlwind. But Mike, that is the bulk of the material I wanted to share with people. The big message I want to get across to everybody is that you may have a bigger technology footprint, and because you have a technology footprint change, you could be faced with a complete tech stack upgrade. Great time to think about moving to the cloud if you're on premise, if that is your strategic direction. But you know, be prepared when you're JD Edwards partner provider, if that's who you use, comes to you and says, hey, this isn't going to be an 80-hour project, this is going to be a 300-hour project, or depends on where you're at. You know, if you're already on 925 with update 4, you're good. If you're on 926 with update 6, your project's going to be an additional 40 hours from a traditional tools release, because you have to migrate things to the from the planner to the database. You've got to configure and test package builds in the web. You've got ESUs that are applied for the web. OMW is now web-based. So you have your technology people have some work to do, and just be prepared for a bigger project than what you may have been used to. Mike, back to you.
Oh, thanks, John. We didn't really get any questions, but I did. So one question I always like to ask, though, is, you know, of the things if of the things you've gone over, if everyone was going to forget everything but remember one thing, what would that be? I mean, what are you trying to drive home maybe that other people aren't talking about this tools release?
I'm sorry, Mike, was that a question for me?
Oh, yeah. No, I was just, a question is there something that you would drive home maybe that underscores everything? If there's one thing that people should remember from today and this tools release, what you talked about, what would that be? Is maybe something about the feature coming up, or just now with these tools?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to quantify my response first. Is that I didn't really discuss features and functionality. So features and functionality would be more of talking about release 22. It's more about the technology stack. I would just make sure the key thing is check where you're at with all of your layers, your technical layers, your database level, your operating system, your middleware. Where are you at, and where do you want to go? And cross-reference the minimum technical requirements with where you're at to where you need to go, because that's going to determine the scope of what you need to do. Your upgrade could be reasonably tame, or it could be that you have a lot of technology to replace.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have a couple minutes left if you'd like to pose some questions. I will use this time, though, just to remind everybody about our educational resources, not the ones trying to sell you a product. And we got plenty of those, but these we have a number of webcasts, newsletters, YouTube. This webcast will be available here probably early next week, if not tomorrow, on our YouTube channel. We try to turn it around, so share it. Or if you came in late, we also have obviously a calendar of events at getgsi.com, and of course we have our social media channels where a lot of this can be found. YouTube page, where we've really tried to construct into playlists. So there's a couple different JDE playlists, a cybersecurity playlist. You get the idea. So certainly would love for you to do that. And yeah, I don't really have any other questions. I think maybe we did get. Oh, here we go. Here's one. If on 9241 and update 3 planning to go to 927 and release 23 next year, should we apply update 4 now? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I've been asked that question before, and it's a tough question to answer. I would say no, because if you're going to 927, you're going to have to, if you want, with 927, you have to be on update 4 or higher. Otherwise, you're going to be cherry picking ESUs, localizations, things you might not even use. We've tried that. I don't think it saves you any advantage of going to update 4 if you're just going to have to apply update 7 when release 22 is out there. So my advice would be no, that's not the thing. Now, if you were on a tools release of 925 and you were on update 4 and wanted to ask the question if you should go to 64-bit, I would say yes. But I don't see the advantage to going to update 4 now.
Okay, I was going to follow that up with the devil's advocate question. Is there a situation where they should, that
if they I don't see the advantage. I can't think of a single advantage of what it would do for you to do it. If I run across one, talk to Sam, I'll get back to you on this, but I can't think of any.
Sure. And yeah, it's just John. I can't give him your email address, John.Bassett, with 2 S's, 2 T's at getgsi.com. But we can also, if you think of something, we can also share it on social media too, just reflecting the question from our webinar. So wonderful. It looks like that's all the questions we got. So I would think really we're at the thank you slide, and we know that there are multiple places, including work and personal stuff you could be doing today. So we really appreciate you taking an hour of your time out to listen to John, and we appreciate your time very much. Again, please follow up if you have any questions, concerns, comments. John, you've got the floor. Any closing thoughts?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks, Mike.